Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson football channel. Today, we've got to talk about it. It is the current hot topic all over the world, not just in football. Newcastle United are about to be taken over by a Saudi Arabian consortium, which would make them, technically speaking, the richest club in the Premier League. The wealth distribution of available funds that Newcastle could possibly have as a result of this takeover going through is astronomical. It is out of this stratosphere, and it would change the landscape of English football forever and European football as well. Newcastle United, a massive club with a massive history, and I'm a Chelsea fan, and I have clubs that I respect. I have clubs that I respect without respecting, but Newcastle United are a club that I have massive respect for. I've always loved their fans. Every time they come to Stamford Bridge, they make an absolute racket, even if they're getting battered. They're always good fun out in London afterwards too. Newcastle is an amazing city. They have a passionate fan base who deserve so much more than what Mike Ashley has given them in the past 14 years. They've been relegated on a couple of occasions to the Championship. 52,000 people in St James's Park is one of the most intimidating atmospheres that you can ever go to as an away club in the Premier League. Newcastle is a fantastic club with fantastic history and heritage, and if there is any team in the Premier League, in my personal opinion, that deserves an injection of cash on this magnitude, for me personally, it's Newcastle United. To give you guys a little overview as to what's going on here, and we all remember a few months ago, or I can't remember exactly how long ago it was now, but there was big rumours that Newcastle were about to be taken over by a Saudi consortium. It fell through, the Premier League blocked it, and there were many other issues that needed to be resolved regarding Saudi Arabia, beIN Sports, who have all of the rights to show the Premier League, and Qatar. Qatar own beIN Sports. It's their company. In the Middle East, we know that football, the Premier League, is absolutely massive. The Saudis couldn't take over Newcastle at that time because the Premier League blocked it, and there were confrontations with the Qataris and beIN Sports that needed to be resolved in order for this to actually go through. Newcastle missed out on it. Steve Bruce is still the manager. They've got a very average squad. They don't play the best football, and it all could have been so different. People were talking about Kylian Mbappe signing for Newcastle United. But in order for any of this fairy tale to actually come into fruition in the footballing world, I's need to be dotted, T's need to be crossed, and lo and behold, Newcastle United is still owned, the majority of it is owned by Mike Ashley. And I think you ask any Newcastle fan who has any kind of passion or care for the results and progress of their football club, the majority of Newcastle fans would probably utter something along the lines of, Mike Ashley, get out of the club. We've seen it for many years now. We've heard Newcastle legends talk about how sad it is that Newcastle have no longer been at the top of the English footballing pyramid. If anything, they're battling to stay in the top division every season. I don't want to go into too much detail about, do I like this idea too much? I've given you guys my thoughts on, in football, we know now that there is so much money involved, and particularly the Premier League, there isn't that many sporting entities and franchises in the world promising for big, rich people as the Premier League. Now, I mentioned the word franchising, and that is kind of a whole nother story in itself regarding the Premier League and desires of rich people and rich consortiums in the world aiming to franchise the Premier League. Now, Newcastle being taken over, the amount of money that these guys have behind them is absolutely outrageous, even by the oil money standards of Chelsea Football Club, of Manchester City. So, as a Chelsea fan, you're never going to catch me sitting here on GBFC in front of you guys talking about this. You're never going to catch me saying, oh, this is annoying, isn't it? It's a bit, I'm a bit butthurt about this one. At the end of the day, I love football for what it is. I love the history of football. I love my team. I love Chelsea. And I love seeing us compete for trophies. And I think in terms of the global appeal of football, we can all say whatever we want about the distribution of wealth in football right now. However, business is business. And you're not going to get a Saudi consortium going to Accrington Stanley and being like, you know what, we got £320 billion here. We see this as a project we really want to go for. It's not going to happen, unfortunately, because Newcastle United are actually a prospect in terms of a business that makes a lot of sense to a Saudi consortium who have that kind of money. There is a project there. There is the historical element of how big of a club Newcastle are. That's no disrespect to Accrington Stanley, but in terms of bringing this into a discussion about wealth distribution within the footballing English pyramid, I think that is probably another conversation for another day, where we need to look at how rich some of these Premier League clubs are and think about how wealth could be distributed better from the Premier League to the Football League. However, in terms of Newcastle United, what does this mean? Well, when £320 billion is the money and figure that's being spoken about, a lot of people bypass the fact that this is actually the value of money that this consortium have at their disposal. It doesn't mean that Newcastle United's transfer budget for the next transfer window is £320 billion. We can look at various other different clubs in the Premier League. For example, Chelsea and Manchester City have been the two most successful clubs in the past 10 years in the Premier League, both of which have very rich oil owners. Now, the reason why Chelsea and Manchester City have been so successful in comparison to the rich owners of, say, a Man United, an Arsenal, a Spurs, and the reason for that is because the money that is injected into the club is actually being managed and spent, or in the Arsenal and Spurs case, particularly Spurs, not necessarily spent on players that are going to build successful football teams. You speak to Arsenal fans, you speak to Spurs fans, and they're always like, you know what, well, we got these rich owners, but, you know, are they really putting the club's progression at the forefront of how they conduct their business? Particularly for Arsenal, Stan Kroenke, I mean, if he left tomorrow, there would be the biggest party in North London, even bigger than if they managed to finish in 4th place in the Premier League. The interesting thing about this is that because these new potential Newcastle buyers have so much money, even if they were to inject 40 billion, I mean, these are astronomical sums, 40 billion, 50 billion into the overall valuation of Newcastle United. Now that they're going to have these incredibly rich owners, it means when they inject this kind of money into the club, the valuation of the club is immediately higher. Newcastle United are about to become available and are about to be ready to spend astronomical sums of money. Now, the repercussions of this is that the Big Six becomes the Big Seven. Newcastle United will be able to buy top quality players. They will be able to attract the best managers. And all of a sudden, to give my personal stance on it, Newcastle will become one of the biggest clubs in England again, in terms of not just the fan base, which is how I judge them as a massive club right now in the history, but in terms of moving forward season by season, Newcastle will be able to financially compete and muscle with the biggest clubs in the world. This means more top quality players to come to the Premier League, more eyes on the Premier League, more money for the Premier League, and it also means that Newcastle, over a period of time, are going to be able to build a squad that means that in a few years' time, Chelsea-Newcastle could well be a title-deciding fixture. It is absolutely crazy. I've tried to make this more of like an opinion on, do I like the sound of this? And to be honest, I do. I think that if there was any club that were going to join this money revolution that the Premier League has become and become one of the big hitters, I couldn't have picked a better club than Newcastle to actually join the oil money of Chelsea and Manchester City in this crazy topsy-turvy world that is football spending, winning trophies, and competing at the highest level in the most exciting league in the world. There are talks at the moment that ex-Chelsea boss Antonio Conte could become the Newcastle manager. A massive statement. One of the world's greatest managers could end up being the Newcastle manager, which would end up seeing players, even in January, potentially, coming in and joining what is about to be a revolution. What happened to us back in 2003 is about to happen to Newcastle United. Newcastle fans, if you're here in the comments, let me know your thoughts. Are you excited? Who do you want to sign? And I think it's going to be a case of in January and maybe even the next window, we're not talking about the best players, but maybe we are. Maybe the money is going to attract, and maybe next season, Newcastle United will be fighting for the Premier League. It's not a crazy assumption to make at this point. I do think January could be a struggle, and I think at the moment they've got to focus on staying in the league. Money might come in, but will the results until then be good enough to even allow Newcastle to fight for anything this season, regardless of who takes over and what players come in January. I think this is a crazy footballing story, and I think it, in the long run, is going to make things just so exciting. And I cannot sit here as a Chelsea fan and be annoyed about it, because we've got an incredibly rich owner as well. But the difference is, some of these owners, they want to inject in their football club. Some of them don't. It all depends if the Saudi consortium want to inject money into Newcastle, but what reason do they have not to? They've seen Mike Ashley not really put the funds in that Newcastle would need to be competing on the highest level. That didn't work. What do? You put in what you have, and they've got a bloody lot of it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys possibly later for a second video. If not, top 20 Chelsea players of my lifetime is dropping for you guys soon. Come on, you Blues.